I'm mature. I'm like, listen, I made a mistake. But now you see the talent. You see the cream rise to the top. Very, very happy for him.
Cris Carter, once one of the loudest voices coming at Shedeur Sanders, has officially changed his tune. The same guy who couldn't stop criticizing is now pulling a full retreat. After the Cleveland Browns laid out their direction for the 2026 season, Carter suddenly reversed course and even offered an apology to Shedeur Sanders. The switch-up caught a lot of people off guard. Once the Browns made it clear they see Shedeur as their future quarterback, the conversation around him shifted fast. Carter didn't just ease up, he joined the growing crowd of critics who are now forced to admit they were off base. This is the same analyst who spent months questioning Shedeur's discipline, breaking down his play in a negative light, and pushing the idea that Deion Sanders somehow held his son back. That narrative didn't age well.
He likes guys to be a little more open before he lets it go. And he doesn't have a big-time arm. He's not a big guy. He's not overly athletic. So his measurables are not.
Carter is now publicly acknowledging that his earlier takes missed the mark. What's happening here goes beyond one apology. It's starting to feel like a trend across sports media, where strong opinions collapse once real decisions get made. But Carter didn't stop there. He went further by saying that if the Browns are locked in on Shedeur as their starter, they should move Dillon Gabriel as soon as possible.
I'm looking to trade Dillon Gabriel.
Okay.
Immediately.
Carter's argument is simple. He believes Gabriel doesn't change anything for the team long term, and in his words, Dillon isn't going to make any difference in the league now. That's not a small adjustment. That's a total turnaround that has people replaying old clips and questioning how these takes were ever pushed in the first place. To really grasp how wild Carter's reversal is, you have to rewind a few months and look at the energy he was bringing back then. This wasn't light criticism or casual doubt. Cris Carter was coming in heavy, aiming straight at both Shedeur Sanders and his father, Deion Sanders. Over and over, Carter pushed the idea that Deion had gone too easy on his son. He claimed Shedeur was overly protected, saying that sheltering him from pressure only hurt his growth. Carter even questioned whether Shedeur had the mental edge needed to survive at the next level, suggesting the pro game would expose him fast. And here's where it got really loud. Carter straight up said Shedeur Sanders was only worth a fifth-round pick. That take alone showed just how low his confidence was in the quarterback. In Carter's mind, Shedeur wasn't close to elite. He argued that the success at Colorado was exaggerated, that the numbers were misleading, and that NFL defenses would quickly shut him down. According to Carter, any team willing to spend a high draft pick on Shedeur would be setting themselves up for regret. He framed Shedeur as a player built on hype instead of substance, someone benefiting more from his last name than his own grind. The criticism didn't stay on the field either. Carter went beyond arm talent and reads. He took shots at Shedeur's mindset, how he was raised in the game, and whether his preparation truly matched what the NFL demands. The criticism was non-stop, and it dominated headlines week after week. Cris Carter's takes weren't quiet, and they definitely weren't subtle, but jumped to the present, and the tone has completely flipped. Carter is now publicly saying that Shedeur Sanders has what it takes to be a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL, something he once brushed off entirely. Instead of tearing him down, Carter is now pointing out Shedeur's growth, how he controls the offense, and the way he's already leaving a mark on the Browns. He's even saying Shedeur earned the right to be the face of the franchise in Cleveland, which is a wild thing to hear if you remember where Carter stood not long ago. So what caused the turnaround? It's pretty simple. Shedeur went out and produced, he showed up, handled business, and made the most of his opportunities. The film backs it up, and once the proof is on tape, even the loudest critics run out of excuses. Carter's apology makes it clear he misjudged a lot. He admits he underestimated Shedeur's talent, his dedication, and how well his college game could translate to the pro level. He also owned up to letting his opinions about Deion Sanders influence how he evaluated Shedeur as a quarterback instead of focusing strictly on what was happening on the field. And let's be honest, this apology storyline isn't fading anytime soon. Carter isn't the only big name who's had to walk things back. Rex Ryan was one of the first to catch heat for his comments. People remember how Rex went after Shedeur, questioning his character and claiming he wasn't built for the NFL.
Quarterback with his arms crossed like this. Get your ass in the front row and study and do all that. If I know, the whole league knows. Quit being an embarrassment that way.
Rex picked apart everything from his mindset to his readiness for the league. But then the narrative started cracking. Shedeur began making real noise, forcing people to rethink what they thought they knew once the results became impossible to ignore. Once Shedeur started flashing real high-level play, the noise shifted fast. The production was right there on film, and it became impossible to ignore. Rex Ryan...
Much ability that I want to see him out there like anybody else.
Yeah.
And why the hell he's not out there
It makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Ryan, who had been one of the loudest voices tearing him down, suddenly reversed course. The same analyst who labeled Shedeur spoiled and entitled was now giving him credit for his maturity and football IQ. It wasn't subtle, it was a full flip. Then you got Tony Grossi, and his name keeps coming up for a reason. Out of everyone, he might have pushed the hardest against Shedeur early on. Throughout training camp, minicamp, and even the preseason, Grossi kept dropping negative reports.
If those plays are intercepted, it's a different game altogether, and we're calling for Shedeur Sanders.
He questioned practice performances, hinted that the Browns made the wrong call, and kept casting doubt at every turn. It got worse when Shedeur dealt with an injury. Grossi suggested he wasn't tough enough and couldn't handle the physical side of the league. That take didn't age well. It crossed from analysis into something personal, and it didn't match what was actually happening. Once the gap between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur became clear on the field, even Grossi had to admit what was obvious. Shedeur was the quarterback Cleveland was building around. Mary Kay Cabot also found herself adjusting her stance again and again. Each time doubt showed up in her reporting, Shedeur answered with another solid outing. It reached a point where ignoring the results just wasn't possible anymore. The performances kept stacking up, forcing a shift in tone.
There's something special there, and that when you surround him with a really good supporting cast and a good offensive line, that we'll even see more of that in the coming years.
So now the question hangs in the air. What's behind all these sudden turnarounds? Why are so many well-known critics walking back their takes on Shedeur Sanders at the same time? The reason behind all these sudden reversals is pretty clear. Talent rises, results matter, and Shedeur has delivered both consistently. These analysts are changing direction because they see where this is heading. Shedeur Sanders looks like a real answer at quarterback for the Browns, and no one wants their old takes resurfacing when that becomes undeniable. Once Cleveland moved on from Kevin Stefanski and made it obvious that Shedeur is a central piece of their future, the message couldn't be missed. The franchise is shaping its next chapter around him, and the critics who doubted him early are now rushing to clean up their narratives. For people in sports media, credibility is currency, and being wrong too many times comes at a cost. Cris Carter, Rex Ryan, Tony Grossi, and Mary Kay Cabot all understand that continuing to push doubt would only damage their standing. Admitting they missed the mark now looks better than doubling down later. It's a calculated move, but it's also an acknowledgement that Shedeur's play forced their hand. For Shedeur Sanders, this stretch has to feel like validation. He took heat from some of the biggest names in football media, had his character questioned, and watched his abilities get picked apart in public. Instead of firing back, he let his game speak. That's what separates him. Through all the noise, Shedeur stayed composed. He didn't trade shots online or chase approval. He focused on his craft, stayed locked in, and allowed his performance to flip the entire conversation without saying a word. He never clapped back with emotional responses or let the criticism mess with his game. Instead, Shedeur stayed quiet, stayed focused, and kept putting in work. He trusted the process and let his performance handle the noise. Now he's standing in a spot where the same voices that once labeled him a fifth-round talent are openly calling him a franchise quarterback. The same analysts who swore he wouldn't last in the league are now breaking down his Pro Bowl potential. That kind of turnaround doesn't happen by accident. This is straight validation of what Shedeur and his family believed all along. They saw the talent, they saw the ceiling, and they never wavered, even when the criticism got loud and personal. At this point, Cris Carter has officially joined a long list that already includes Rex Ryan, Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, and plenty of others who had to walk back their takes. What began as one of the most heavily criticized quarterback paths in recent memory has shifted into something very different. Shedeur Sanders is now viewed as one of the most promising young players in the league. The Browns have made their stance clear. They're moving forward with Shedeur Sanders as the foundation for 2026 and beyond. One by one, the doubters are falling in line, admitting they misjudged him and recognizing what the tape has been showing all along. Shedeur Sanders belongs. And this story isn't slowing down. As Shedeur continues to grow into the role and settle in as Cleveland's quarterback, more voices are going to be forced to adjust their old opinions. The wave of reversals is still building, and there's plenty more to come. So where do you stand on Cris Carter's apology? Do you buy it, or do you think these critics should fully own the damage done by their earlier words? What makes this situation hit even harder is how fast the narrative collapsed once the evidence piled up. For months, opinions were treated like facts, and speculation was pushed as certainty. Once Shedeur kept stacking strong performances, those confident takes suddenly didn't sound so confident anymore. The silence from some critics said just as much as the apologies from others. This also exposes how quickly perception can outweigh reality in sports coverage. A label gets attached, and instead of reevaluating, people double down until the results force their hand. Shedeur didn't benefit from early praise or easy assumptions. He had to earn every ounce of respect through execution, consistency, and composure under pressure. What we're seeing now isn't hype, it's correction. The conversation is shifting because it has to. Ignoring production only works for so long before credibility takes a hit. That's why so many voices are suddenly aligning. Not because they all change at once, but because the margin to deny what's happening is gone. Shedeur Sanders didn't rewrite the story with words. He rewrote it with snaps, reads, and results. And the people who were loudest on the way up are now trying to stay relevant on the way back down, hoping the audience forgets how certain they once sounded. At the end of the day, this whole situation says more about the noise around the game than the player himself. Shedeur Sanders didn't chase validation. He didn't beg for approval. He stayed locked in while the opinions flew, knowing the truth always shows up eventually. Now that it has, the same voices that doubted him are scrambling to stay relevant in a conversation they were wrong about from the start. This wasn't luck. This wasn't timing. This was preparation meeting opportunity while others underestimated what they were watching. The league didn't change. The standards didn't change. The only thing that changed was people finally being forced to admit what the tape has shown all along. And this is exactly why stories like this matter. Not because of the apologies, but because of what it exposes about how narratives are built, pushed, and defended until reality steps in. Shedeur Sanders didn't just earn a starting job. He exposed a system that's too comfortable being loud instead of being right. If you want the real breakdowns, the context, and the stories behind moments like this, make sure you're tapped in with Huddle files. That's where the noise gets stripped away and the game gets told straight. And you already know, we'll have every second of it broken down, every twist, every leak, every hidden play behind the headlines. So like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share it out. Stay locked in with Huddle Files, where the real NFL stories live.